pretty much an island. I talked to
Alec,
Woodbridge.
Alec, let me stop you there. Thank you for the snapshot. Keep working your way here. We could use the help. Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy, what do you got?
Aaron, joining us now, our congressional correspondent Kate Snow for an update on what some members of Congress have been doing. We know they've been evacuated from the Capitol building, but Kate, you've been learning about some of their assessment of what's happened. I'm sorry, we don't have that audio connection with Kate. I can report that sources are telling CNN's national security correspondent David Ensor that there are, quote, good indications that people with links to the Osama bin Laden organization are responsible for today's attacks. We can't do much better right now at identifying these sources, but again, they're saying good indications. And this is, again, no proof, but this is very much in line with what high-ranking people have been telling us throughout this day, all the way from former NATO commander Wesley Clark. General Wesley Clark told us hours ago, and then again just a few moments ago, we spoke with him just a few moments ago. He said that there are very few organizations that would have the sophistication, the financial resources, the organization, the network of contacts to carry out an attack this sophisticated, this organized, where you have planes hitting these key locations in New York City and Washington, the Pentagon, within just minutes of one another. People who could take over the cockpit of an airplane and presumably push the pilot aside. We can't imagine that any pilot would knowingly fly an airplane into the Pentagon or into any place where there were people. That some of these people with connections to the terrorist organizations must have been at the cockpit. Joining us now, and I believe he is in a studio, George Terwilliger, who has had a career of following the activities of intelligence organization, has become an expert on terrorist activities. I'm sorry, we're not going to go to George Terwilliger. We're going to go to White House spokeswoman, Counselor Karen Hughes in Omaha.
And I'm here to update you all on the activities of the federal government in response to this morning's attacks on our country. As you heard from President Bush a short time ago, the federal government is acting to help local communities with search and rescue and emergency management operations, to take all appropriate precautions to protect our citizens, and to identify those responsible for these despicable attacks on the American people. While some federal buildings have been evacuated for security reasons and to protect our workers, your federal government continues to function effectively. We have a federal emergency response plan, and at President Bush's direction, we are implementing it. We began to implement it immediately after the first attack in New York this morning. We contacted American forces and embassies throughout the world and placed them on high alert. The United States Secret Service immediately secured the President, the Vice President, and the Speaker of the House, and they are all safe. They have also secured members of the National Security Team, the President's Cabinet, and senior staff. As you know, President Bush was in Sarasota, Florida when the first attack occurred this morning. Air Force One has now landed at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, and the President is in a secure location. He is in continuous communication with the Vice President and key members of his Cabinet and National Security Team. Vice President Cheney and our National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, are in a secure facility at the White House. I have just come from there. The Secretary of Transportation and other members of our White House senior staff are gathered at a command center there, and we are coordinating with other branches of our federal government. The Secretary of Defense remains at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of State is en route back to Washington from his trip to South America. President Bush is conducting a meeting of the National Security Council as we speak. They are meeting President Bush from his location and other members from different locations in Washington and other locations. As many of you have been reporting, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered all airports closed, and all planes which were in the air were directed to land at the nearest airport. International flights were diverted to alternate locations outside of the United States. Transportation Secretary Mineta has directed the Federal Aviation Administration to suspend operations until at least noon tomorrow. So no airline flights will operate until at least then, and until the FAA announces that operations will be resumed. Secretary Mineta has also issued orders controlling the movement of all vessels in United States navigable waters. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has activated 8 urban search and rescue task forces in New York, and 4 of these highly trained teams are at work here in Washington at the Pentagon. Every federal agency has implemented continuity of operations plans to make sure the government continues to function effectively. While the markets closed today because of the situation in Manhattan, the United States financial system has continued to operate. Banks have been open all day. The Federal Reserve has operated regularly and continuously. The Department of Health and Human Services has mobilized medical personnel and supplies to provide help to local authorities who are working so diligently to respond and try to help the victims of these terrible attacks. President Bush has committed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to identify and bring to swift justice those responsible for these despicable attacks. The Department of Justice is setting up a hotline for families who fear that their relatives may have been victims of one of these attacks, and we will be announcing that telephone number shortly. Our fellow citizens and our freedom came under attack today, and no one should doubt America's resolve. President Bush and all our country's leaders thank the many Americans who are helping with rescue and relief efforts. We ask our fellow Americans for your prayers for the victims, for their families, for the rescue workers, and for our country. Thank you all very much, and we will continue to update you as information is available and confirmed.
Karen, how will the President return to the White House? Will he go back to Washington, Karen? Will he address the nation? If the Vice President can stand...
Presidential Counselor Karen Hughes in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of the FBI talking to reporters, and very unusual. She did not take questions, which normally would be the case for someone speaking in a spokesperson's capacity. But what we heard from Ms. Hughes is that all appropriate precautions are being taken. She said the President is in a secure location, the Vice President, and is in continuous contact, she said, with Vice President Cheney. She mentioned again that Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld is at the Pentagon. Secretary of State Powell, she said, at an undisclosed location. She said she went through, ticked off a list of measures that have been taken to assure that the federal government of this country continues to operate. She said a plan was put in place after the first attack on the World Trade Center this morning, and she said it has been in operation ever since. In an effort to be reassuring, she said on high alert, the United States forces were put on high alert. American embassies abroad, the same thing. She said not just the President and the Vice President, but also when you think about the succession to the presidency, the Speaker of the House would be third in line after, or second in line after the Vice President. She said the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, has also been put in a safe, or taken to a safe but undisclosed location. CNN senior White House correspondent John King at a location since the White House was mainly evacuated about a block away. John.
Well, Judy, Karen Hughes working throughout the day in the White House Situation Room in the basement of the White House at a fortified structure.
A great deal during the day. It's going to last for a number of days. We told the President that we thought that the whole rescue effort would take a week or so or more. But the main focus right now, obviously, is on saving as many lives as possible. I think it's still possible for us to save a lot of the people that are there. They're not all there. All of our police and firefighters are not there. We have a lot of police and firefighters. Bernie, do you want to explain where the police and firefighters are?
No,
we do not, and we're not going to put one out until much later, after we get a better sense of the numbers we're talking about.
The police and the police deployment is, primary focus is down in southern Manhattan in the rescue effort, but we're tending to our policing needs all over the city. We, as the mayor said earlier, we're getting assistance from the governor and the National Guard. About 200 National Guardsmen about 2 hours, about an hour ago, I guess. There'll be another about 1,500 sometime this evening to come in to help us. And we're going to continue on the rescue efforts, but policing will go on in the rest of the city as usual.
For other possible actions, how is that going?
Obviously, we're in a high state of alert. We're looking at other government buildings, securing those buildings, securing other areas in the city. Right now, our primary focus and our efforts are in southern Manhattan.
One more, please.
I don't think anybody. The mayor and I were there this morning. I was there when the second plane hit the building. I was right underneath the building. I don't think anybody would have imagined that one of those airliners would have hit the building like that. Nobody in their right mind would have thought that would happen. So, and in this circumstance, it was something we couldn't avoid. We couldn't have stopped, even if we tried.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've been listening to Mayor Rudy Giuliani, obviously fairly close to the site where the rescue operations are underway in New York City, reassuring that every effort's being made to get as many people out and to hospitals as they possibly can. Now, back here in Washington, let's return to our senior White House correspondent, John King. John, and let's talk about what the White House is doing, and some of which we heard about from Karen Hughes, who's a counselor to the president just a minute ago.
Well, Judy, some of this involves security precautions, which is one of the reasons the president is not yet back in Washington. He is now in Nebraska at a military air base conducting a National Security Council meeting, although at the White House they are putting a priority to getting him back as soon as possible. They believe that picture of the president returning to the White House would send a powerful signal. You heard both Karen Hughes here in Washington, Mayor Giuliani just again in New York, trying to reassure the citizens that the government is at work despite these atrocities today. They very much want to get the president back. Now, from an operational standpoint, the Vice President and the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, are in the Situation Room in the basement of the White House. That is the command and control system used for natural disasters, used for terrorist attacks like this one, used in the case of major military operations. That has been up and running throughout the day. The senior staff at the White House operating out of that. Ms. Hughes, on the one hand, trying to send reassuring signals, saying the government was up and running, the financial systems were up and running. Yet on the other hand, she too noted the remarkable paralysis this event, these terrorist attacks, have caused in the United States. Commercial air systems shut down nationwide at least through noon tomorrow. Security officials still not confident enough to bring the president back to Washington. So Karen Hughes delivering a statement, bringing us up to date on the activities and the movements of the president and the vice president, at the same time saying the United States government still looking into who is responsible for this. And I know David Ensor is standing by with more information. White House officials saying their early indications are that they believe, and David may have more information, that these attacks are linked to the suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden. Judy?
All right, John, you are right. David Ensor, our national security correspondent here in the studio in Washington. David, I know you've been on the telephone. What have you been able to learn?
U.S. officials are saying that they now have new and specific information, and they say this information is good indications that people with links to Osama bin Laden may have been responsible for these attacks. I asked, is this new information that's come in since the attacks? Yes, it is. Is it specific in nature? Yes, it is. Now, they're not completely eliminating the possibility that the attacks could have come from somewhere else, not ruling out a Saddam Hussein-inspired attack or some kind of combination of Palestinian groups or some other combination. But good indications that people with links to bin Laden may have been behind the attack, and this is new and specific information, the officials say. They are also expressing a certain amount of what I think is best described as anger at the comments by the Afghan government, by the Taliban government, by Wakil Ahmed Mutawakel and Mullah Omar, the leaders over there who have commented today, in which they denied that Osama bin Laden has ever organized terrorism out of Afghan territory. One official calling that lies. Lies, lies, lies. And there's a certain amount of black humor also now setting in as, like other Americans, national security officials, intelligence officials, the first thing they felt when they saw what's happening and what we're looking at on our screen here was shock. But that is turning now to anger. And when I asked whether there were considerations being given to some sort of retaliation against targets in Afghanistan, one official said, "I wouldn't be planning your vacation there if I were you."
David Ensor, just quickly, when they describe this new and specific information, do you know enough about the kinds of sources or the kinds of the methods here that you could characterize where this information might be coming from or in what form?
Well, they are not saying anything specific about exactly what the nature of this information is, as you can expect, Judy. However, when I talk to officials about the kinds of information that they would be gathering now, they confirm that that information includes passenger lists of the aircraft that were downed, videotape at airports from cameras, from security cameras in the airports. In a few days, they will have cockpit recordings. And there's also a limited number of people who are suspected of belonging to terrorist groups who are known to be able to fly aircraft. And it looks as if at least some of the personnel involved in this plot must have been able to do that in order to carry off this set of attacks, Judy.
Absolutely chilling to hear you say that, David, that there are people in these organizations, and we now know it, who could fly commercial jetliners to do these horrible, unspeakable acts that have been committed today in the United States. And now, as we look at live pictures of New York City, where the smoke still billows from the location of the World Trade Center's buildings that were 100 stories high, now completely decimated. Smoke coming from those buildings 6 hours after the collapse of these Twin Towers. To Atlanta and to my colleague Joey Chan.
Judy, we want to bring our viewers up to date. Of course, it's just after the top of the hour, and many people are probably tuning in at the top of the hour trying to understand the events of the day. So we want to bring you up to date on what we know, what we've been able to learn throughout the course of the day's events. There were two airliners just about 18 minutes apart this morning, which crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center at separate times. Both planes apparently had been hijacked. One of them was an American Airlines flight. The other is believed to have been a United Airlines aircraft. Now, the buildings collapsed not long after the attacks, and as you see, the people in the streets below just were rained on with the debris from these collapsing buildings. There are tens of thousands of people in these buildings on any given day at the World Trade Center, but officials say they do not yet know how many people may have been killed, and they do not want to venture a guess until they know more, until they have more solid information about what's happening. Again, the effort still to control the fire at the World Trade Center. Now, about a half hour after the second attack in New York, an American Airlines jet crashed into the Pentagon building. You see it there. Again, the plane was believed to have been hijacked as well. The building has burned throughout the day as firefighters have worked, trying very hard to get the blaze under control. Parts of the Pentagon building, you see it there, have collapsed. The casualties there are expected to be high, but again, we don't have any firm numbers yet on that. About the same time, a fourth plane was hijacked this morning. This one was believed to be a United flight from Newark, New Jersey, bound for San Francisco, and then it crashed in western Pennsylvania, about 80 miles south-southeast of Pittsburgh. Again, CNN continuing to follow up on all fronts. We want to return now to New York, and from his rooftop vantage point, CNN's Aaron Brown. Aaron?
Joey, thank you. Shimon Peres, the Israeli foreign minister, has been active in Israeli governments for as long as most of us can remember, and has witnessed more of these terrorist attacks than any of us should experience. He joins us now to talk about this one. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you.
Before, sir, we get to any of the specific questions, let me just ask you first, if I may, for a reaction to what has taken place here.
Our heart is with America, and our heart is with the thousands of families that have lost their children, their brothers, mothers. For Israel, it's a day of mourning. We announced that tomorrow the whole nation will be mourning. And I'm sure that as bitter and painful the event is, the only one that can save humanity from this terrible danger is the United States of America. It was not an attack only upon America, but an attack upon civilization, an attempt to introduce the rules of jungle in our life, not to permit people to fly freely, to walk safely, to be assured at the places they live. It is like a declaration of war or an introduction of a terrible arm, and we have to draw all the conclusions fully, uncompromisingly, and right away.
Sir, you have been a soldier, a leader of a country. You have been privy to some of the most detailed intelligence reports there are out there. Are you surprised by the sophistication that must have been at play to carry out these attacks?
It's a sophistication of the most evil kind. You know, only evil people can arrive to such a sophistication. And the measures must be radical as the evil itself. I think what should be done is to identify every country that hosts or supports terror and declare those countries as terrorist countries. I think there must be a call to all religious leaders, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, to condemn fully, without an excuse, all the suicidal bombers, suicidal persons, who in order to kill others, they kill themselves. It's against the basis of our life. It's against the gospels of every believer. And then again, we have to organize ourselves globally, because we are going over from a world of enemies, where you have had armies to face them, to a world of global dangers that we don't have yet neither a strategy nor an army to stop it. We have to get ourselves organized properly and fully and immediately.
Mr. Foreign Minister, I hope you'll answer this. Let me ask it anyway. Did the government of Israel have any intelligence prior, any indications prior that something like this might happen?
Not specifically. We have had warnings, and there are all the time warnings. But we know, and all of us are aware of some of the addresses from where terror can origin. But anyway, I don't have any specific information, and I wouldn't like to blame anybody without full knowledge.
I understand that, and let me then, just for the record, ask the logical follow-up, which is, since the attacks themselves, has Israeli intelligence picked up any information that suggests who might be involved in this?
Any information we shall have, we shall hand over immediately to our American friends. And we also send right now, you know, a plane with our rescue team, which is already on the way. Whatever we shall be able to do, or we can do, in order to be of help, we shall do it full-heartedly, without any reservations. Permit me to say that today each of us feels American, like an American, with all the seriousness, all the pains, and all the determination.
Sir, do you have any doubt in your mind that the root of this attack on the United States today, the root of it took place in the Middle East, that the events in the Middle East, the organizations in the Middle East, do you believe that to be the case?
I think we have to bring an end to the conflict in the Middle East, but you know, there were already acts of terror in the United States disconnected from the Middle East. and there are in many other places the same story. We have to put an end to terror because it's a danger to every person and every country, no matter where it is. So the reasons are important, but the attraction to use terror in order to kill, in order to threaten, is existing everywhere. It's not connected to a specific case or specific place.
Sir, thank you. Shimon Peres, the Israeli foreign minister, a long-time Israeli leader in any number of governments, joining us from Jerusalem tonight, where it is a little bit after 11 o'clock, about 10 minutes after 11. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We are getting information now that one of the other buildings, Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex, is on fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing. And you, to be honest, can see these pictures a little bit more clearly than I. But building number 7, one of the buildings in this very large complex of buildings that is the Trade Center, there were, and that is the right way to put it, there were the 2 towers, but then there are a number of support buildings around it, retail spaces, restaurants, office space, garages. The trains come in from New Jersey, bringing commuters, taking commuters back, come into the complex that is the World Trade Center. And now we are told that there's a fire there, and that building may collapse as well, as you can see. We can see, as we look now back downtown, we can see the billowing smoke. It is extraordinary to us, I guess, is how long this scene has gone on. The smoke has not cleared at all. It has not lightened at all. There was that horrific moment when the towers collapsed, and then we've been in this sort of situation ever since, as the fires continue to burn. Rose Arce, one of our producers who has been slowly and diligently making her way to the building, described the fires that she saw in the area of the towers themselves. And clearly those fires continue to burn at about 4:15 Eastern Daylight Time today, in an unbelievable and awful scene in New York. Judy?
Aaron, for those of us who don't know that area of Lower Manhattan, you are explaining something that is important, because I think the belief had been that there were just the 2 towers, but you're now telling us that there are several other buildings that make up the complex of buildings. And as Aaron is just saying, and we're hearing for the first time, one of these support buildings is on the verge of collapse, if it has not already collapsed. It looks to me, as it may to Aaron as well, with these live pictures, that smoke is so black that it may be the result of a fresh part of this terrible disaster. But it is only speculation at this point. We evidently don't have anyone on the phone down there that we can get to right this moment. But of course, when we do, we will tell you what is going on. We do know that every effort is being made by New York emergency authorities to get people out. But you also heard our producer Rose Arce say not too long ago that even the emergency personnel cannot get close because debris is falling at a steady rate within a 2-block radius around the Trade Center. And even their most heartfelt efforts to get in there and rescue people, they just can't do it because the risk is too great. We're going to continue to watch this horrific scene in New York City as we bring you up to date on what has been happening here in Washington. The Congress would have been in session today. In fact, it was gaveled to order this morning. At least that's my understanding. But members of Congress, after these buildings were hit, were quickly evacuated. And some of them have been gathering. There was report not too long ago that at 6 o'clock today Eastern Time that there would be a conference call of the congressional leadership to assess the catastrophe of today and to consider when the United States Congress should meet again. As of now, the Capitol was largely evacuated. CNN's Kate Snow is at a location near the Capitol, and she's been talking constantly to members and to members of the staff. Kate, what are you learning?
Judy, we are still under a lockdown at the Capitol. We've been told that Senator Lott and Senator Daschle would like to call the Senate back into session this afternoon. They would like to do that. Whether that's going to be a possibility is unclear at this point. Joining me here a couple of blocks away from the Capitol is Senator Bob Graham, Democrat from Florida and the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. You hold a position where you are in the know, Senator. Tell us, what do you know at this point about the events that have transpired today? Have you been briefed yet?
Kate, we're about to have a briefing. The head of the CIA has been briefing the cabinet and the other key officials to the president this afternoon, and he's going to be talking to members of Congress on the intelligence committees and leadership shortly.
It's been reported, our David Ensor has reported, that there are strong indications that this could be linked to Osama bin Laden. Do you personally believe that that could be the case?
Kate, I think it's premature to start naming a prime suspect. If you'll recall, after the Oklahoma City bombing, there was an early identification of an Arab group that had done it. Turned out to be false. Let's withhold until we get a little more information. My own sense is that there are not very many groups around the world who have the capability of planning, coordinating, and executing a terrorist attack of this sophistication.
You are constantly being briefed by the FBI, by the CIA, by the National Security Agency. You are one of the senators that knows the most about our national security. Do you believe that there was any advance warning of this attack?
No. If there had been advance warning, there would have been steps taken to have interdicted it. There had been a general threat warning that there was a greater likelihood of some terrorist attack somewhere in the United States, but it was not at a sufficiently detailed level to allow for some response.
And when was that general warning?
Early in the summer, there was a general announcement of an increase in threat level for terrorism.
And were there changes made then to our security? Tell me about that.
Yes, there were general steps taken in terms of our intelligence gathering, particularly related to those that we had the highest level of suspicion, greater security at key vulnerable areas, and I'm certain that the military was placed at a somewhat higher level of alert.
Were you then surprised as you sat in your office? You told me you were here this morning, you were on Capitol Hill when the first word started coming down about what happened in New York. Were you surprised?
Well, the answer is I was shocked at what actually happened, that the extent of it, the gruesomeness, the audaciousness of this kind of an aerial attack against some of our best known symbols of America. I was not surprised that there was an attack, was surprised at the specificity of this one.
Does the Senate now, to show that the Senate can get on with business and that the U.S. Congress has not been impeded, do you think the Senate ought to come back and get back to business to send that signal?
Well, I think first, as all Americans, we need to extend our sympathy to the families that have been so tragically affected by this. We also need to send a signal to the world that a group of terrorists cannot intimidate the greatest democracy in the history of the globe, and that we will continue to carry out our responsibilities.
And at this briefing, you told me within the hour, before 5 o'clock Eastern, you expect to talk not only with intelligence, FBI, but also with your colleagues, the leadership. And I understand some decisions are going to be made about how to proceed from here.
Well, I think what we'll be getting at this briefing is some more detail as to what happened today. But there clearly are some things that we have known that need to be undertaken for our long-term protection. For instance, we need to make a greater investment in human intelligence. That's old-fashioned spies that can get close to a terrorist, find out what their intentions and motivations are. We need to see that our technical ability to gather information stays as world-class as it has been for the last 50 years. and we need to close the gap between the amount of information we gather and that which we're able to analyze and convert into useful intelligence.
Okay, Senator Bob Graham, Democrat from Florida, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, joining us here. He's about to receive a briefing, Judy, and we will get back to you with word when we know more from here. Judy?
All right, Kate, we've been listening closely to what Senator Graham was saying, and I would just remind everyone, if they haven't already taken note of this, that this week is actually the anniversary of the Camp David Accords. Those took place back in 1978, 23 years ago, over a period of about a little more than a week, between September 5th and about the 17th. This was the framework for peace in the Middle East, an agreement between Israel and Egypt that many of the more hardline Arab states said they would never forgive Egypt and certainly Israel for doing this. They felt betrayed by it, and there are those today suggesting perhaps that had something to do with the timing, although at this point it would be purely speculation to say one way or another. You're continuing to see pictures of the terrible devastation in New York City in the aftermath of the 2 airplanes that flew into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. There are adjacent buildings, part of the World Trade Center complex, that are still very much at risk. One of these buildings may have collapsed or may be in the process of collapsing. Aaron Brown, back to you in Manhattan.
Judy, thank you. Jim DeStefano is a structural engineer. He knows about big buildings and what happens in these sort of catastrophic moments. He joins us from Deerfield, Connecticut on the phone. Jim, the plane hits. And I hope this isn't a terribly oversimplified question, but what happens to the building itself,
well,
the structure?
Yeah, it's a tremendous impact that's applied to the building when a collision like this occurs. And it's clear that that impact was sufficient to do damage to the columns and the bracing system supporting the building. That, coupled with the fire raging and the high temperatures softening the structural steel, then precipitated a destabilization of the columns, and clearly the columns buckled at the lower floors, causing the building to collapse.
So it is a combination of, as we see again this extraordinary shot of the second plane hitting the tower, it is a combination of the impact of the plane itself and then the fire that ensues that causes these, I don't know, are they called beams, to buckle?
It's the columns. The vertical elements are columns, and those are the elements that are holding the whole building up. And those are the critical, vulnerable elements that clearly failed in a buckling mode from the high temperatures and the damage from the impact.
Now, I'm not asking you to assign any blame to anyone about anything here, but just give me an idea if, in fact, you can design these buildings in such a way so that this sort of thing does not happen even in a catastrophic event.
Well, it's very difficult when you're designing a structure like this to imagine all the scenarios of things that might occur to the building during its construction. It's my understanding that when this building was designed, one of the criteria that it was designed for was a direct hit from a 707. Clearly, planes are larger today, and it wasn't considered the effects of the aftermath fires and high temperatures that would have been applied to the structure subsequent to the collision as we saw it today.
And to the best that you can, give me an idea of how long it will take for that building to be safe to go into, because what we know is or what we believe at least, there are still people trapped in there. The mayor talked about a week that this rescue operation is going to take. Is that realistic?
I think it's very realistic that what we've seen in other collapses like L'Ambiance Plaza here in Connecticut and the Hyatt Regency in Kansas City and the Oklahoma City bombing, it takes a very long time to clear the rubble and find all the people that might be trapped underneath it.
But at what point, what has to happen before it is literally safe to send someone into that space?
I don't know that it will ever be safe. I think the rescue people that are in there trying to save people are very much at risk, as they always are in these kinds of disasters. That the structure is always, when you have a pile of rubble like this, the structure is always somewhat unstable. So those rescue workers that are in there are at some risk. That there's never a point where you can say this building is safe to walk into and start looking around.
Jim, thank you. Jim DiStefano, a structural engineer, joining us from Deerfield, Connecticut on the phone. We have, over the last 6 or 7 hours now, shown you some extraordinary pictures. Many of those pictures have come from the air. We have seen the plane hitting the tower. We've seen the tower collapse. In this day and age, lots of people walk around this city, and every city, I guess, with video cameras, and one of them today in Lower Manhattan was Dr. Mark Heath. Dr. Heath kept rolling, as we say in the news business, and this is what he saw with as little commentary from us as possible.
I hope I live. It's coming down on me. Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car. It's incredible. Okay, I'm gonna have to go find people who need help, because I don't think I'm one of them. You okay, sir? Okay. Can I just get a toot off your respirator? Can I get a toot? I'm just getting a couple of clean breaths. That's good. Okay. Back to you. This is the car I hid behind. It saved my life. Wait, maybe it was this one.